I'm on the Camino again. Can you believe this? Look at this. There's my shell. Got my backpack. I have my amazing e-bike, and this thing is just so rugged, it's unbelievable. With my backpacks on the back, it's going to be an epic trip. First thing I did was stop by Santiago de Compostela, the actual church that everybody makes the pilgrimage to, because I started from there and I went south down to Porto. And it is absolutely beautiful here. Notice the weather is perfect because I'm a weather traveler. I had 4 different locations I was going to go to, either Egypt, I was going to go to Tarifa, Spain to kite surf, or possibly down to Turkey. But the best weather was here along the coast of Portugal. And so I decided that would be the trip I would make, and I made all the reservations at the last moment. That means one day before and even the day of. Rode around the square, saw all the pilgrims who have come in, such a relief. A lot of them have gone over 800 kilometers. I already made this trip before, and now I'm on my next journey, and it is absolutely beautiful. So the first stop, I stopped to get a cup of coffee, was just a little rest side stop here. It's just very quaint, and you see a lot of these along the way, and they're just really wonderful. So part of the magic of these trips are how beautiful it is in nature and just in the woods and going through the little towns and villages. So sometimes you're in big cities, but for the most part, you're out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of times it's dirt trails, sometimes slightly paved, sometimes some gravel. Just all depends. It's always changing, and this is what I love about it. It's just a very beautiful and tranquil setting. I never listen to any music or anything. I just ride my bike. And it's really nice with the e-bike because you're not struggling too much, but you're getting a pretty good workout. My heart rate is generally about 100 to 110, and I just love it. And this time, going through a lot of vineyards, and their grapes were all ripe, and I got to taste some. Oh my gosh, there were some places I went, it was just unbelievable. They're hanging down everywhere, just so beautiful. There's always changing scenery, and it's just an amazing experience to go on a trip like this. And of course, the sunsets are always beautiful, and you cross from town to town and into village after village, and you cross waterways. And at this time, I even caught a water taxi. But I'm not going to narrate the entire trip. I'm just going to let you kind of enjoy everything and just see it, because it's just such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And, you know, I traveled this time about 200 kilometers, not the 800 that I did last time. And I didn't make it all the way to Porto, but what I did do was I made it down into Portugal, and then I decided the terrain was not as interesting to me. So I stopped and rented a car, left my bike at the rental car agency, and then rented a car and drove all through the wine valleys of Portugal. And it was just absolutely fantastic. Went back, picked up my bike, and then went back to Vigo and flew out of Santiago de Compostela. But just again, another fabulous journey, weather traveling. And I jumped in the water all the time. There's beautiful beaches along the way. Just so many special things about this trip. I could not recommend it enough. You could probably do this trip in about a week and really, really enjoy it one way. And so you don't have to go from Porto up. You always start at Santiago de Compostela and go south, which personally, if I was doing it again, that's exactly what I do. That's what I did, and I would repeat the same way. I wouldn't go towards there. I felt like it was just a little easier because a lot more downhill for one, and it was just beautiful. And plus, you weren't fighting all the people. You were actually looking at people coming onto you, and it's a little easier to negotiate past them than coming up behind them all the time. And there's quite a few pilgrims, so that's kind of a nice feature about the whole thing. But as you can see, everywhere I went was absolutely beautiful. I rented some beautiful Airbnbs along the way, stayed in little hotels. I didn't stay in any albergas this time, but it's just a beautiful experience, and lots of cool little restaurants with people stopping and having a coffee or having a salad, an enchilada. It's just an amazing experience. I'm past Vigo, and I got to tell you, it was beautiful. And then I stopped at a bike store, and this was their drawer. I couldn't believe it. It was so crazy unorganized. And then this is along the coast of Spain, getting down in towards Portugal. And some of the beaches were just so absolutely stunningly beautiful. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it to be this pretty, but indeed it was. And I caught a water taxi across over to Portugal because there actually wasn't a bridge. It was really fun, and they had electric motors on this thing. I asked the guy if they were better than the gas ones. He said no. Anyways, got into Portugal. Portugal was very beautiful. But then along the coastal route, it wasn't as beautiful as it was in Spain. This little village right here in Portugal is very, very pretty. But then it got a little boring, and I thought, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when I rented a car. And I got the car, and before long, I got up into the mountains, and it just started getting so beautiful up here. And this is the wine country in a national park that's really famous. A lot of beautiful rock formations. And then I went down to this lake area, and they had great places to swim down in the lake. And I went in the water down there, and it was just absolutely fantastic. What a great trip. And then I stopped at a lot of great restaurants that were really beautiful, and it's not very expensive. Portugal and Spain are very, very reasonable. You get a meal for easily 10, 20 bucks, no problem. And then I stopped by a vineyard, and they were processing all the grapes, and this is all the leftover of the skins and everything. I thought, God, you could use this and make it as a garnish on top of a salad. It was actually a little tasty, lots of great fiber. Then I stopped by this amazing winery called Grams, and this is in Porto, and this is one of the most famous ones. And they had port wine that was so old and so vintage, and I did a little wine tasting of port wine, and it was just absolutely beautiful. 1908, 1963, just some amazing vintages. And then, of course, Porto is one of the most beautiful cities. I think it's UNESCO World Heritage, and it's absolutely beautiful. This is one of the wine tasting rooms they had at Graham's. It was fantastic. And I learned a lot about looking at wine through light and seeing the different colors and everything with the sunset. And overall, it was like one of the most fantastic trips I could ever have. And again, just simple weather traveling, doing everything at the last minute, and somehow or another, it always turns out perfect. So hopefully you enjoyed this.